Go to Senate Republican Conference Chairman John Thune of South Dakota on this. What do you think, Senator? How doable is this?
It's doable, Neil, but nothing's ever easy. We're trying, as was pointed out, that to negotiate sort of a final deal that the Senate could adopt. They have to go back to the House. But we really need to get the budget cap for the military raised. It's a national security. I would characterize it as a crisis. We've heard consistently from Secretary Mattis and from the service chiefs that we really have our readiness at risk if we don't start making some adjustments and plussing up the amount of resources that we're dedicating to the military. Unfortunately, of course, anytime we do that, the Democrats hold that hostage to getting a dollar-for-dollar increase in non-defense spending in the budget. And so that's what is being negotiated right now, in addition to some other things that might be carried on that bill that would go back to the House. So we'll see how it all transpires this afternoon, but I think that the negotiations are coming to a conclusion, and I'm hopeful that we'll at least have a deal that could move through the Senate. One
thing that worries me, Senator, is the debt keeps piling up regardless. Are you worried about that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, that's why, again, anytime that the Democrats insist upon, and this is how they grow government, we get money for the military, but it has to be offset by a dollar-for-dollar increase in non-defense discretionary spending. They have no interest in dealing with entitlement reform, which is where the real spending is. We've got to get our arms around entitlement programs if we're going to make them more sustainable. The other component of that, as you know, is growing the economy. Faster growing economy generates more government revenues, and so there are a couple of ways in which you can deal with this debt problem. And I think that we're putting the right policies in place to grow the economy. We've already seen evidence of that this last year. I think tax reform will build on that, and you get that growth rate back up to a more historic average, and these deficits look a lot smaller by comparison.
It's looking like we're going to have $1 trillion deficit this year. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I think we've got to get it under control. And again, one of the ways you do that is if we grow at 3% even, which would be below the historical norm, that would generate a tremendous amount of additional revenue. It's about, for every 1% increase in GDP, it generates about $3 trillion in additional revenue over a 10-year period. But that has to be coupled with, Neil, spending restraint. And it's very, very hard, of course, because we have these requirements that we have to meet for defense. But it's all this additional spending that Democrats demand in order to get a deal, and their unwillingness to enter into a discussion about what we're going to do to reform our entitlement programs, which again is where all the the big share of in the big spike in government spending goes, particularly in the out years.
Do you think it's wise, Senator, for the president to encourage a government shutdown? That it would be worth it to get some of the immigration issues resolved, do all that, the wall? I understand his frustration. But that's the leader of our government, our country, the free world, saying he would feel free to shut the government down. It would be a good thing. How do you feel about that?
He really wants to get a deal on immigration, and he really wants to get border security. We all do.
I understand that, but to threaten a shutdown, right. Do you think that's wise?
Well, I just don't. It's not something I would support or condone. I don't think a shutdown serves anybody's interest, and I think we've learned that historically, and of course as recently as a couple of weeks ago, which is why I think the Democrats are more inclined to try and get a deal this time around, because I think they learned the hard way a few weeks back too that government shutdowns just don't serve any purpose. So I know that the president is standing firm and wants to get a deal on immigration. We do too, and the leader has indicated he's going to put a bill on the floor next week, and I hopefully the president's proposal, which I think is a very good faith proposal on immigration, gets a fair hearing and a vote. But I just don't think shutting down the government makes any sense in order to accomplish that.
Senator, real quickly, I mean, you had expressed some reservation with the release of this famous Republican memo, as it's come to be known, on what started this entire FBI investigation of the Trump operatives and their possible Russian ties. Now there's a Democratic memo that might be out sooner than we think, or no. You were concerned about the effect this could have. I think I've got that right. Are you still now?
You know, my concern about that, Neil, had to do with any classified information that would compromise sources and methods. I think that's why it was really important, and I tried to convey that last week before the Republican memo was released, that the intelligence community have an opportunity to vet this and redact things that might in any way jeopardize
but nothing was
or put at risk.
Nothing was redacted, right?
Well, I think they did make some redactions, my understanding is, and I think they will with the Democrat memo as well. My general view is more transparency is better. Get the facts out there, let the American people decide. But I also think you have to listen to the warnings that are issued by our intelligence community and those people who are tasked with protecting us. And hopefully, I think the administration did that last week before the release of the Republican memo. And I think they're going through that same process this week with the Democrat memo.
All right, Senator, thank you for taking the time. Very good seeing you again.
Thanks, Neil. You too.